We're back now on KID News Radio, 590 AM and 92.1 FM. Neil Larson along with Calla Curtis in studio.
Hey, Neil, this is an interview I've been excited about. We're joined by Spencer Harden. He's the Film Acquisition and Development Manager at Cedar Fort Incorporated. Spencer, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be with you.
It's an interesting topic because there is a certain genre of movies that I think, me, my family, certainly a lot of our listeners really enjoy, kind of a faith-based movie. And yet critics and Hollywood really turn their nose. So really, movies about faith are not really getting the respect they might deserve. Is that right?
Well, with all due respect for critics, I read what they say. I love they provide a great service. But what Mark Twain said about critics is he said, the public is the only critic whose opinion is worth anything at all. And if you look at, some of these faith-based movies that have come out this year that are getting some incredible box offices, you've got God's Not Dead that gets $60 million in the box office. 81% of the audiences love that movie. Now, the critics, this is on Rotten Tomatoes, the critics, 17% like that movie. So it's just kind of upside down. The same thing with Heaven is for Real, Son of God. Son of God gets 73% from the audience, but only 21% from the critics. So there is, some kind of a disparity between what the audience is like and what critics like.
So I look, Spencer, and we're a conservative talk station, so you'll understand this question when I ask it, but I view critics largely as part of the liberal media establishment. So if there's anything out there that promotes traditional values, family values, that sort of thing, there's an automatic bias against it. Do you kind of view it the same way, that maybe there's an immediate hurdle for faith-based films to overcome with critics because there's a natural bias against the message of those films?
Well, it's interesting. We kind of take cues from the East and West Coast. And if you look at, I've got here in front of me a Pew Research survey that was done not too long ago. And, they interviewed 35,000 respondents. And they asked the question, do you believe in God or a universal spirit? 92% of Americans said they do. Now, that's huge, but if you were to look at what the critics say and what the pundits say out of Washington, D.C. or New York or L.A., there is this bias. There's this kind of bias that, no, people in America don't really believe in God, and why would we want to go see a movie that affirms a belief in God? I know that critics are going to, their job is to critique. So, they're going to be critical, but there does seem to be a little bit of a bias here.
I think those of us who have kids, my husband and I wanted to take our kids to a movie, I don't know, it was probably a couple of weeks ago, and I looked through the local listings, and there was not one movie that I felt comfortable sitting with my kids in. So, there certainly are some of these movies, Heaven, God's Not Dead, and Heaven is for Real, and those kinds of movies, but they feel like they're kind of few and far between in terms of at least coming from Hollywood. When does Hollywood get the message that we like these kind of movies and we're willing to pay for them?
Well, I think they're starting to get it, but here's the thing. I was at a conference. It was a summit. It was put on by Variety magazine in Hollywood, and it was called the Faith and Family Film Summit or something like that. And there was an electricity among those organizations and companies and production companies that have been in this space, in the faith-based film distribution business. Because all of a sudden now we're getting these bigger box offices, and Hollywood can no longer say nobody cares about these movies. And I'll tell you, Disney was there, and there was someone who asked in the crowd, well, now that you can see that there's some money to be made in faith-based movies, do you think you'll make more faith-based movies? And the executive said what I would expect someone from a publicly held company is going to say, which is we're going to make films that apply to the broadest and largest audience. We're not going to pick a specific faith. Well, that's probably why Hollywood will never be entirely authentic in this industry, in faith-based movies, because for them to take a stand on a particular belief in God is going to be politically incorrect. And so it kind of gives, I think, a great opportunity for smaller independent filmmakers and distributors like ourselves to be sincere in our belief in God and to bring messages to the screen that Americans are hungry for.
Yeah.
And I think that what we'll see is that because of the success of some of these faith-based movies, we will see more, and that's the good news.
Do you think, I know when I go see a PG-13 movie with my son or with my wife, for most of those movies, there's a lot that I will that you have to tolerate, whether it's innuendo or violence or whatever the case may be. And the reason why I like faith-based movies is, for the most part, you don't really have to worry about that stuff. And do you think that faith-based audiences might be they're not going to see special effects. They're not going to necessarily see all those things that make a traditional mainstream PG-13 movie, all glittery. They're going for the message. They're going for that. So do you think maybe they're more tolerant of possibly lower production values or those sorts of things that get characterized by Christian movies?
Well, then that's the thing. I think people go to the movie theater to escape and to and to have an experience where they can put aside the real world and granted, some of these $100 million budgets that Hollywood has can create incredible effects, and they get these high-paid, extremely popular actors. And it does present a little bit of a challenge for these smaller, independent, faith-based movies to come up with that kind of level of quality as far as the technology is concerned. But what people really want is a good story, and they want to be able to identify with those characters. And I'm getting so tired of I'm sorry about this, but of going to the screen and seeing these cartoon comic strip characters that I can't identify with. Anyway, I think the best example of this is Noah. I mean, here's a film that it's got all of the special effects, it's got the actors, and it's just the opposite as far as audience and critics are concerned. I'm looking at the statistics here. It gets 77% of critics who like Noah, and only 43% of the audiences. So, here's a film that gets $70 million in the box office for first weekend, and then it just tanks. It just drops off 70% because the audiences say, he's on the boat. He saves his family from the flood, and then he wants to kill him on the boat. I mean, where does that come from? That's not in the Bible.
Yeah.
So, I think story is key here.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Spencer, you were involved in the Saratov approach, which a lot of our listeners probably saw. The new movie you're involved in is called Wayward The Prodigal Son. Something kind of along those same lines. It's certainly a message that a lot of our listeners can relate to.
Oh, it's a wonderful film. It's entertaining, and it has a great message. We've taken this film to, independent audiences. We were out in Irvine, California a couple of weeks ago. Broad spectrum of Christians across the board. And they all stayed, and they wanted to talk about this film. They wanted to say, how can we get this message out and get people to the theater? It's really exciting to see a film like this making inroads. We're in, I think, 46 theaters in 24 markets. I mean, we're in places like Columbia, South Carolina, Knoxville, Tennessee. All these places out in the South and other areas where there's a strong Christian population. Neil, this film is PG-13, Wayward the Prodigal Son, and if you look at the scripture, it does say that this young man devoured his inheritance with harlots and riotous living, and there's a little bit in that. You've got some adult themes, but this is a very mild PG-13. It's very sensitive to family issues. And, like the Saratov approach, I think it's going to reach a lot of people.
And that premieres locally at the Paramount 5 in Rexburg. Calla, what is the showing time on that?
We're giving away some tickets for opening night. It's tomorrow night, Friday, at 8:50 at the Paramount 5 in Rexburg. We'll be giving away tickets to that showing.
That's great. That's great. I'll just let you know, there is a little sneak peek at the Edwards and Ammon as well. So that will actually be tonight. But we've got. Go ahead.
Oh no! I was just saying that's great. So it will be at Edwards tonight then.
Yeah, they're doing a little early preview there at the Edwards Grand Teton in Ammon at 7:15 and 9:45, and then of course it releases nationwide across the country, including the Paramount 5 there in Rexburg tomorrow night.
All right,
Wonderful.
Fantastic. Spencer Harden, again, the film is Wayward, The Prodigal Son. Is there a website for that, Spencer?
Yeah, our tagline is on November 7th, he strays. Love him home at hestrays.com.
Okay, hestrays.com. Spencer, thank you so much. We appreciate your time, and good luck with the movie.
Thank you very much.